The first 10 minutes after you get out of bed in the morning tell you more about your joint health than any blood test your doctor can order. Pay attention to that window. Notice how long it takes before your hips stop aching. Notice whether your knees feel like rusted hinges as you walk to the bathroom. Notice whether your shoulders protest when you reach for the towel. Most people over 50 have accepted this as the price of getting older. They call it morning stiffness. They wait for it to pass. They take an ibuprofen and get on with their day. But here is what that morning stiffness is actually telling you, and why ignoring it is one of the most expensive mistakes you can make for your long-term independence. Your joints are not wearing out, they are drying out. And the difference between those two explanations changes everything about what you do next. Your joints are lined with cartilage, a smooth, shock-absorbing tissue that has no direct blood supply. It cannot receive nutrients the way your muscles or organs do. Instead, cartilage feeds itself through movement. Every time you move a joint through its full range of motion, synovial fluid gets pumped in and out of the cartilage like water through a sponge. That fluid carries oxygen, glucose, and the building blocks cartilage needs to repair itself and stay resilient. When you sleep, you are still for 7 or 8 hours. The fluid movement stops. The cartilage partially dehydrates. Waste products accumulate in the joint space. You wake up stiff. That stiffness is not damage. It is your joints telling you they are thirsty and that they need to move. The problem comes when the movement that should fix the stiffness never happens. When you walk from the bed to the couch, from the couch to the car, from the car to the chair at work, and then reverse that sequence in the evening, you are not giving your joints the range of motion they need to properly flush and refill. You are just rolling them through a fraction of what they are capable of. Over months and years, this restricted movement pattern leads to something called joint capsule tightening. The connective tissue surrounding the joint thickens and shortens. The synovial membrane becomes less efficient at producing fluid. The cartilage begins to thin because it is not receiving adequate nutrition. And suddenly, the stiffness that used to clear up in 10 minutes takes 30, then an hour. Then it never fully goes away. This is not aging, this is disuse. And disuse, unlike aging, is completely reversible. A study published in the journal Osteoarthritis and Cartilage found that adults over 50 who performed daily joint mobility exercises for 8 weeks showed measurable improvements in synovial fluid volume, joint space width, and self-reported pain reduction compared to a control group that did standard stretching. The mobility group was not doing intense exercise. They were not lifting weights or running. They were moving their joints deliberately through their full range of motion for fewer than 20 minutes each day. That is all it took to begin reversing years of joint deterioration. Before we get to the 5 exercises, let me ask you something. When you wake up in the morning, do your hips ache before your feet have touched the floor? Do you need to hold the handrail going downstairs, not because you are afraid of falling, but because your knees genuinely hurt? Do you notice that you have stopped doing certain things, bending to pick something up, reaching overhead, turning to look behind you while driving, because they cause enough discomfort that it is easier to just avoid them? Has your doctor told you that you have mild to moderate arthritis and that the best thing you can do is stay active, without telling you specifically how? Do you feel looser and less stiff after you have been moving for 30 minutes, which suggests the problem is not structural damage, but inadequate daily movement? If any of those descriptions match your experience, the 5 exercises in this video are built precisely for your situation. Not for elite athletes, not for people who are already fit, for people over 50 who are dealing with the kind of stiffness that limits real daily life. Now, let me explain what is happening in each of your major joints after 50, because understanding the mechanism is what makes the solution make sense. In your hips, the femoral head sits inside the acetabular socket. The hip joint capsule, the fibrous sleeve that wraps around the entire joint, becomes progressively tighter as hip mobility decreases with age and sitting. When the hip capsule is tight, the joint cannot move fully into extension or internal rotation. Your body compensates by rotating from the lumbar spine instead, which loads the discs and creates the low back pain that most people assume is a spine problem when it is actually a hip mobility problem. A study from the Journal of Orthopedic and Sports Physical Therapy found that targeted hip mobility work reduced chronic low back pain by 41% in adults over 55 within 6 weeks, with no change to the spine itself. The pain was coming from the hip, the spine was just taking the blame. In your thoracic spine, the 12 vertebrae between your neck and lower back, the natural tendency with aging and prolonged sitting is toward increased kyphosis, a forward rounding that reduces the available rotation in your mid-back. When your thoracic spine cannot rotate, your neck and lumbar spine rotate more to compensate. This is one of the primary reasons people develop neck pain, shoulder impingement, and lower back pain simultaneously, even though all three sites feel unrelated. Restoring thoracic mobility reduces load across all three regions at once. In your ankles, the joint that almost nobody pays attention to until it becomes a problem, loss of dorsiflexion, range of motion, the ability to bend your foot upward toward your shin, changes how your entire body absorbs force during walking. Restricted ankle dorsiflexion causes your knee to cave inward, your hip to compensate laterally, and your lower back to extend excessively with every step you take. A study from the Journal of the American Podiatric Medical Association found that limited ankle dorsiflexion was independently associated with knee pain, hip pain, and plantar fasciitis in adults over 50, even when the ankle itself felt fine. The ankle was the root. Everything else was downstream. Understanding this cascade is important because it means the 5 exercises I am about to show you are not randomly selected stretches. Each one targets a specific joint, addresses the specific mobility restriction that accumulates at that joint after 50, and has a documented downstream effect on pain and function in at least one other part of the body. Exercise number 1 is the 90-90 hip capsule opener. This movement targets internal and external hip rotation simultaneously, which is the specific range of motion most compromised by years of sitting and the most directly responsible for low back compensation patterns. To do it correctly, sit on the floor and position both legs into a 90-90 arrangement. Your front leg has the knee bent at 90 degrees directly in front of you, with the shin running horizontally across your body. Your back leg has the knee bent at 90 degrees pointing out to the side, with the shin running parallel to your torso. Both knees should be at 90 degrees. Sit as tall as possible. If you cannot get both sitting bones close to the floor in this position, place a folded blanket or firm cushion under your hips to elevate your pelvis slightly. This is very common in the beginning and does not reduce the effectiveness. From this position, without leaning your torso away from the back leg, rotate gently toward your front leg. Feel the stretch in the external rotator muscles of your back hip, the piriformis and the deeper hip rotators. Hold for 3 slow breaths. Then lean your torso gently toward your back leg, feeling the internal rotator muscles of your front hip engage. Hold for 3 slow breaths. That is 1 cycle. Complete 4 cycles on this side, then carefully switch leg positions and repeat on the other side. The common error people make is rotating their torso away from the tight side to reduce the sensation. That eliminates the benefit. Stay tall and let the hip do the work. Do this exercise every morning before you stand up from the floor, and within 2 weeks, you will notice that the first steps of your morning feel materially different. Exercise number 2 is the thoracic rotation with a dowel or stick. The thoracic spine is designed to rotate significantly more than either the lumbar spine or the cervical spine. But after 50, most people have lost a substantial portion of that rotation without knowing it. This exercise restores thoracic rotation in a way that directly unloads the neck and lower back. Sit on the edge of a firm chair with your feet flat on the floor, hip width apart. Hold a broomstick, cane, or resistance band behind your neck, resting across your upper shoulders with both hands gripping it at each end. Your lower back should be in a neutral position, not arched and not rounded. From this position, rotate your entire upper body to the right as far as you can go without your lower back or hips moving. The rotation should come entirely from your mid-back. Hold at the end point for 2 seconds and feel the muscles between your shoulder blades working. Then rotate all the way to the left. That is 1 repetition. Do 10 repetitions on each side, moving slowly and pausing at the end of each rotation. The key instruction here is to keep your head neutral in relation to your torso. Do not lead with your chin or let your head rotate separately from your mid-back. The entire block from your shoulders to your head moves as a unit. If you feel any pinching or sharp sensation in your neck during this movement, reduce your range of motion significantly. You should feel a stretching sensation and mild muscular effort, not pain. After 2 weeks of daily practice, test your ability to look over your shoulder while reversing your car. The improvement tends to be immediately noticeable in that specific functional task. Exercise number 3 is the ankle dorsiflexion wall drill. This is the exercise that most people skip and the one that has the broadest downstream benefit of any movement in this sequence. Stand facing a wall, close enough that you can place both hands lightly on it for balance. Place one foot about 6 inches from the wall with your toes pointed directly forward. Keeping your heel completely flat on the floor and your knee tracking directly over your second toe, push your knee forward toward the wall as far as you can without your heel lifting. The goal is to touch the wall with your knee while keeping your heel down. Measure how far from the wall your foot needs to be for your heel to start lifting. That is your current dorsiflexion range. For most people over 50 with joint stiffness, the foot will be 4 to 6 inches from the wall at most before the heel rises. The target after 6 to 8 weeks of daily practice is 8 to 10 inches. Do 10 slow repetitions on each side, pressing the knee forward and drawing it back in a controlled motion. The 10th repetition should feel noticeably easier than the first, which confirms the synovial fluid is moving and the joint is lubricating. After the repetitions, hold the end position, knee pressed forward and heel flat, for 30 seconds on each side. Do this every day, preferably in the morning before your first walk. The change in how your knees and hips feel during walking within 4 weeks is reliably significant. Exercise number 4 is the lying thoracic extension over a rolled towel. While the thoracic rotation drill addresses side-to-side mobility, this exercise addresses the forward curve that develops in the upper back over decades of sitting and looking down. Roll a standard bath towel tightly and secure it with 2 rubber bands so it holds its cylindrical shape. Lie on your back on a firm surface and place the rolled towel horizontally across your upper back at the level of your shoulder blades. Your head should rest on the floor or on a thin pillow if needed. Your knees are bent with feet flat on the floor. Allow your arms to rest out to the sides, palms facing up. Simply let gravity do the work. Your upper back will begin to extend gently over the towel, opening the front of your chest and reversing the forward curve. Stay here for 2 to 3 minutes, breathing slowly and deeply. You should feel a comfortable release across your chest and mid-back. If you feel any sharp or pinching sensation in your spine, slide the towel slightly higher or lower to find the position that produces release without discomfort. After 2 to 3 minutes, slide the towel slightly higher toward your neck by 2 inches and rest again for another minute. Then slide it lower toward the middle of your back and rest for another minute. You are systematically mobilizing each segment of the thoracic spine. The immediate effect of this exercise is a noticeable reduction in upper back tension and a feeling of being able to breathe more deeply. The cumulative effect over weeks is improved posture, reduced neck tension, and a measurable reduction in shoulder impingement symptoms. A study from the Journal of Manipulative and Physiological Therapeutics found that passive thoracic extension mobilization performed daily for 6 weeks produced equivalent improvements in thoracic mobility to manual therapy performed by a physical therapist. You can get the same result on your living room floor with a bath towel. Exercise number 5 is the standing hip flexor decompression with a step. This is the last exercise and arguably the most important for understanding why your hips and lower back ache the way they do after 50. The hip flexors, primarily the iliopsoas and the rectus femoris, run from your lumbar vertebrae and the front of your pelvis down to the inside of your femur. When you sit for prolonged periods, these muscles shorten adaptively. Over years of sitting, they can shorten enough that they begin pulling your lumbar spine into an anterior tilt, which compresses the lower lumbar discs continuously every moment you stand or walk. This is not a weak core problem. It is a tight hip flexor problem, and stretching your hip flexors in the traditional lunge position often does not reach the iliopsoas effectively because most people compensate by arching their lower back, which releases the stretch before it reaches the muscle. This exercise eliminates that compensation. Stand in front of a step or a low, stable surface about 8 to 12 inches high. Place your right foot up on the step. Your left leg stays on the ground behind you, straight, with your heel flat. Now, tuck your pelvis forward by squeezing your left glute firmly and flattening your lower back. Do not arch. Do not lean forward. With your pelvis tucked and your glute squeezed, shift your weight forward slowly until you feel a deep stretch in the front of your left hip and groin, not in your lower back. Hold this position for 45 seconds while breathing normally and keeping your glute actively squeezed the entire time. If the glute squeeze releases, the pelvis tilts and the stretch moves from the iliopsoas into the lumbar spine, which is exactly what you want to avoid. After 45 seconds, step down, shake out the leg, and switch sides. Do 2 holds on each side. The glute squeeze is not optional. It is the mechanism that differentiates this exercise from a standard lunge stretch. Within 3 weeks of daily practice, most people report a noticeable reduction in the lumbar ache that appears during prolonged standing, because the underlying cause, the anterior pelvic tilt from a shortened iliopsoas, is beginning to resolve. Now, let me address the 5 most common mistakes people make when attempting mobility work after 50, because doing these exercises incorrectly does not just reduce their effectiveness. In some cases, it can create new pain. Mistake number 1 is confusing end range sensation with pain and stopping too early. There is a meaningful difference between the sensation of a tight muscle reaching its limit and actual pain. Mobility work requires you to move into and hold the end of your current range, which produces a sensation of pressure, stretch, or mild discomfort. This is not injury. This is the point at which the joint capsule and surrounding connective tissue receive the mechanical stimulus they need to remodel and lengthen. Stopping before you reach this point means you never send the signal your tissue needs. The guideline is simple. A sensation of stretching or pressure that you could maintain for 30 to 45 seconds without increasing is appropriate and productive. A sharp, stabbing, or worsening sensation is not. Learn to distinguish between them. Mistake number 2 is bouncing or pulsing through mobility exercises rather than holding sustained positions. Your muscle spindles, the sensory organs embedded in muscle tissue that detect stretch, have a protective reflex called the stretch reflex that causes a muscle to contract when it is stretched quickly. If you bounce through a mobility exercise, you repeatedly trigger this reflex and the muscle contracts against the stretch each time. The connective tissue never has time to respond. Sustained holds of 30 seconds or more are required to get past the stretch reflex and actually influence the joint capsule and fascial tissue. Move slowly into position and hold. Do not bounce. Mistake number 3 is working only on the painful area and ignoring adjacent joints. Because the body compensates across joints, the painful area is often not the source of the problem. Hip pain frequently originates from ankle or thoracic spine restrictions. Knee pain frequently originates from hip mobility deficits. Lower back pain frequently originates from hip flexor tightness or thoracic stiffness. Doing all five exercises in sequence, even if only one area feels restricted, addresses the full kinetic chain and prevents the pattern of compensation that redistributes load onto an area until it becomes symptomatic. Mistake number four is doing mobility work only when pain is present and stopping when pain subsides. Mobility loss is a gradual process that happens over months and years without producing significant pain until a threshold is crossed. Pain is a late signal. If you wait for pain to begin your mobility practice and stop when the pain goes away, you are perpetually catching up to deterioration rather than staying ahead of it. The most effective approach is daily maintenance. 10 to 20 minutes of mobility work every morning, regardless of whether anything hurts that day. Mistake number five is expecting stretching to substitute for mobility work. Passive static stretching and joint mobility work are not the same thing. Stretching primarily lengthens the muscle belly. Joint mobility work targets the joint capsule, the synovial membrane, the articular cartilage, and the deep connective tissue that wraps the joint itself. These structures require active movement through range of motion, not passive muscle lengthening. The five exercises in this video are not stretches. They are joint loading patterns designed to move synovial fluid, stimulate cartilage nutrition, and progressively expand joint capsule compliance. Stretching is a complement to this work, not a replacement for it. Now, let me answer the five questions I hear most often from people over 50 who are beginning a joint mobility practice. Question one is whether mobility work helps with diagnosed osteoarthritis or whether it makes it worse. It helps. The standard medical advice to rest arthritic joints is outdated and has been contradicted by consistent research for over a decade. Cartilage has no blood supply and receives its nutrition exclusively from the mechanical compression and decompression that occurs during movement. Rest starves cartilage of the nutrients it needs and accelerates its breakdown. A systematic review published in the British Journal of Sports Medicine in 2022 analyzed 31 trials involving over 3,700 adults with osteoarthritis and found that low-load joint mobility exercise was the single most effective non-pharmacological intervention for pain reduction and functional improvement, outperforming analgesic medication in every outcome category beyond 6 weeks. Move the arthritic joint. Move it gently. Move it daily. Question two is, how long before you notice a genuine difference in morning stiffness? Most people notice a reduction in the duration of morning stiffness within 2 weeks of consistent daily practice. This is the synovial fluid response, which is rapid. Structural changes, actual improvements in joint capsule compliance, and cartilage hydration take 6 to 8 weeks. Both timelines are real. You will feel an early improvement that encourages you, followed by a deeper, more durable improvement that rewards consistency. Question three is whether these exercises are safe if you have had a joint replacement. Hip and knee replacement surgeries restore the bony architecture of the joint, but do not restore soft tissue flexibility or joint capsule mobility. Mobility work is generally recommended after joint replacement, once the surgical healing period is complete. However, the 90-90 hip opener and the ankle dorsiflexion drill should be cleared with your surgeon or physical therapist first, as post-surgical range of motion parameters vary by prosthesis type and placement. The thoracic exercises and the hip flexor decompression are safe for virtually all post-replacement patients. Question four is whether you can do these exercises if you cannot get down on the floor. The 90-90 hip opener can be performed seated on the edge of a firm bed with both legs arranged in the same configuration. The thoracic extension over a rolled towel can be performed seated against the back of a firm chair with the towel placed vertically along your spine rather than horizontally across your back. The other three exercises require no floor contact. Adapt the positions to your current capacity. The principle of the exercise is more important than the exact position. Question 5 is how to fit all 5 exercises into a realistic daily routine without needing to set aside a full hour. The sequence of all 5 exercises, performed once through, takes between 15 and 20 minutes. The order matters. Begin with the lying thoracic extension, which you can do before getting out of bed or immediately after. Then do the ankle dorsiflexion wall drill as part of your morning transition. Then do the thoracic rotation with the stick, which you can do seated at the kitchen table. Then do the 90-90 hip opener on the floor or at the edge of the bed. Then finish with the standing hip flexor decompression at the step. This sequence moves from the floor up, which is a practical progression that minimizes the number of times you change positions. The total time investment is genuinely 15 to 20 minutes. What that 15 to 20 minutes protects over the next decade of your life is worth understanding clearly. Let me tell you about a man named Dennis. He was 63 years old when his daughter called me on his behalf because he had stopped taking his dog for morning walks, which had been his daily ritual for 11 years. His hips hurt too much by the halfway point of the route. His knees ached going down the porch steps. His lower back was stiff every morning until noon, and sometimes all day. His doctor had told him he had mild osteoarthritis in both hips and moderate arthritis in his right knee. He had been told to take anti-inflammatories when needed and to avoid high-impact activity. He had interpreted that advice as avoid most activity. He had been doing progressively less for 18 months. He was 63 and already grieving physical activities he assumed he would never do again. Dennis did not need surgery. He did not need medication changes. He needed to move his joints through their full range of motion every single morning, and he needed someone to explain why that mattered more than any prescription he had been given. We built his morning around all 5 exercises. He did them in his bedroom and living room before breakfast every day. After 2 weeks, his morning stiffness was clearing within 15 minutes instead of 90. After 6 weeks, he completed the full morning walk with his dog for the first time in a year and a half. After 12 weeks, he added a second walk in the evenings. He told me later that what had changed was not just his joints. It was his belief that the trajectory was reversible. Dennis is not exceptional. His joints responded exactly the way joints respond when they are given the movement they are built for. Let me bring everything together cleanly before you close this video. Stiff joints after 50 are not a sign of irreversible degeneration. They are a sign of inadequate daily movement through full range of motion, and that is a completely solvable problem. Exercise number 1 is the 90-90 hip capsule opener. Sit on the floor with both legs in 90-degree bends, one in front and one to the side. Rotate gently toward each leg and breathe into the restriction. 4 cycles each side every morning. This restores hip rotation, reduces hip capsule tightening, and directly addresses the root cause of most low back pain in people over 50. Exercise number 2 is the thoracic rotation with a stick. Sit on the edge of a chair, hold the stick across your upper back, and rotate your entire upper body slowly to each side. 10 repetitions each side daily. This restores thoracic mobility, unloads the neck and lower back simultaneously, and improves your ability to rotate for all daily tasks. Exercise number 3 is the ankle dorsiflexion wall drill. Stand close to a wall, push your knee forward over a flat heel, and hold the end point. 10 repetitions each side plus a 30-second hold every day. This unlocks ankle mobility, corrects the downstream compensation patterns that cause knee and hip pain, and improves your walking mechanics immediately. Exercise number 4 is the thoracic extension over a rolled towel. Lie on your back with a rolled towel under your shoulder blades and let gravity open the front of your chest for 2 to 3 minutes. Then reposition slightly higher and lower. Do this daily, ideally before getting out of bed. This reverses the forward thoracic curve, reduces shoulder impingement, and restores your breathing capacity. Exercise number 5 is the standing hip flexor decompression with a step. Place one foot on a step, squeeze the opposite glute firmly, and shift your weight forward until you feel the stretch deep in the front of the grounded hip, not the lower back. 2 holds of 45 seconds each side daily. This decompresses the iliopsoas, corrects anterior pelvic tilt, and eliminates the continuous lumbar compression that causes most of the aching in the lower back during standing and walking. That is the full sequence. 15 to 20 minutes every morning, the same time you would wait for ibuprofen to work. Your joints are not failing you, they are asking for something specific, and now you know exactly what that is. Stiffness is a signal, not a sentence. If this video changed the way you understand what is happening in your body in the morning, hit like so this channel can keep bringing you the science behind the body you live in. Comment below with the number of the exercise you are going to start with today. Just the number, 1 through 5. And if you have been dealing with morning stiffness for years and assumed it was simply part of getting older, write, "I did not know," because that comment will reach someone else who needs to hear that this is not inevitable. Share this video with someone in your life who has quietly stopped doing things they used to love because of joint pain. Your neighbor who gave up gardening, your friend who stopped going to their grandchildren's sports events, your spouse who gets up an hour before you just to let the stiffness clear before the day begins. Their joints are not broken, they are thirsty, and the solution is simpler than anything they have been told.